Alright, so welcome to this After Effects tutorial. This lesson covers only the basic things that you can do in After Effects so you can familiarize yourself with it and you are able to use this software to create an animation, a very simple animation. It is assumed that you have experience in Photoshop, Illustrator, and Flash, so there will be things that I would not mention too much. When I want to start an After Effects project, mostly I would do my artworks in Photoshop or Illustrator. It is rarely that we draw in After Effects. So let's go to our Photoshop document, and you can see that I have traced this crane out from a photo, and it is separated into parts. So you want to separate all the parts that you want to animate into individual layers. You can see that I can rotate and pull out all those stuff, and it looks like it is animating, but it won't be exported as an animation. So right here, we have a problem because there's this empty space after I crop this image out from its original photo. Just to make sure that there won't be any empty spaces later on that will appear in my animation, I want to fill up this empty space with some touch-up. So just to make sure that there won't be any like very tiny flaws that will appear later on when I animate my object, I will make sure that all the parts are filled up, no empty spaces in between, just to make a precaution. Right, so that's done, and you can see that when we rotate it, it is good to go. Let's go ahead and import our Photoshop file. You will see that there are three import options here. Make sure that you choose composition, retain layer sizes, not footage or composition, because let's say you want footage, you just want a layer, then you can use footage. Make sure that you choose your layer within your, make sure you select choose layer and choose the layer that you want. Or you can choose merge layers. The Photoshop will be imported as a flat image. Or when you use composition, the thing about importing this is that you will see that all your layers would be expanded to the entire Photoshop document size, which is not what we want. So let's import this again and choose composition, retain layer sizes, and make sure that this is selected. Click OK, and when we go into our composition, you will see that all the layer sizes are correct. Let's say I want to rotate my wheels, so I can go ahead to transform, rotation, click on the stopwatch, go to the length I want and create this rotation. Alright, that's better. So we have our rotating wheel, and basically we want the same for this. So what we can do is we just have to select this rotation here, click on Ctrl+C copy, paste on the rotation, and you can see that the keyframes are pasted. But make sure that whenever you do this, you are at the first frame of your animation. So let's say that I don't go to the first frame, I go to the further away and I paste. You see that the keyframes are not located the same as this other wheel. So if we want it to be the same, we need to move to this first frame here. You can make it accurate by making sure that you click on this, like go to previous frame, and you make sure that you are at the right frame. Then you press Ctrl+V and paste. So the values will be the same. So maybe I want to animate the crane as well. You realize that, okay, we click on R, shortcut key, and you see that the crane is not rotating on the right pivot point. So to change that, we click on A to assess the anchor point. You can do that too by just clicking on this drop down menu and you go to anchor point. You move it closer to the center point where you want it to rotate. Okay, and you move it back to its original position. Now I can rotate my crane, but the thing is, even though I can rotate the crane, this hook is not following my crane. So what I can do is that I click on this squiggly button here. You can see that it's beneath the parenting panel. Left mouse, drag it to the layer that you want it to be parented to, and you see that crane will appear here. The name of this layer will appear here. And whenever I rotate this, it will follow. So let's give it a bit of an animation, very subtle one, like this. And let's move this to R, click on the stopwatch, and give it a bit of like, give it a bit, oh, the anchor point is not set properly yet. So we want it to be roughly here, here, and move it back. Alright, so we go back to rotation. Okay. Alright, so you can see that it looks better now. We also realized that the animation may seem a bit too linear. That's because the keyframes are by default in linear interpolation. We can change that by right-click selecting your keyframes that you want to change, right-clicking it, and go to keyframe interpolation. You can change the settings here into the settings you want. Continuous Bezier will show like an ease in, ease out effect. It's not obvious here because the speed is not fast. Speed it up a bit. Alright, so you see that it kind of like has this slow in and slow out effect. Let's move it back. And you can also make it into a block, like you want it to just jump a frame, right? So sometimes you want something to stay the way it is, not to move. You can toggle hold keyframe. Sorry, not that. Toggle hold keyframe. And you realize it won't move until it hits that keyframe and it jumps. You can also convert your keyframe to this continuous Bezier interpolation by clicking on F9. Like this as well, F9. So we can go to our test composition. To put in our crane composition, we just have to drag our crane composition and put it there. You realize that there's too many empty spaces around the corner. You can also trim it down by clicking on this region of interest and then select composition, trim comp to region of interest, sorry, crop comp to region of interest, and that will happen. See, I have some more here. Maybe I want to remove that, but I think I want to leave space for this hook. So you're in your final composition. You see that the composition is trimmed properly. I'll try to animate this from here, move to here. And you realize one thing is that when your animation is playing, it doesn't seem like it doesn't seem realistic. One thing is maybe because there's no motion blur, there is no blurring. So we can enable this by clicking on this motion blur, and enable it in the preview. So when it plays, it has this slight motion blur that you might not notice in this slow motion, but when it gets faster, you see that the effect helps a lot. Like this, let's say, yeah, you see that it blurs out like that. We can also add in effects just like in Photoshop. You go to the effects panel and let's try something that we use a lot in Photoshop, Gaussian blur. So it works the same as in Photoshop, but the different thing is that you can animate your effects. So we can go to the effects and you can see that there's a stopwatch button here. Let's click on that. And just like how we animated the position, transform, opacity, you can animate the effects. You can also do a multiple layer effect. Like in Photoshop, you have a lot of like layers of effects that stacks and it gives out a different outcome. So I'll try this with the glow in After Effects. This is very commonly used, and you can see that this glow affects the color of your object, your composition, your graphics, but it mostly just affects the part with color. It would not affect black. And that's glow, and we can still add in more glow. It will give another type of visual effects that you might not realize that it could do that. And it differs when you put in different arrangement, it would have a different outcome. Basically, you can search all your effects either from here, you can apply them here, or you can select from this effects and presets panel. Like I want to search for glow. There I have glow. Search for blur, Gaussian blur, blur, and you search based on the keyword. You can also add in cameras in After Effects. Just go to Layer, New, Camera, and you will see that you have this camera. You can name it like main camera. So it would give you a warning that your layers have to be in 3D layer. So camera only works when you have 3D layers in your scene. So let's say I move this around, you won't see any effects on this crane because the 3D is not enabled. So just look at this column here and enable 3D. So you see when I move this around, it seems like this thing is in the 3D space. You can control your camera by pressing on C and select different types of camera movement that you can move. So that's rotation, this is move, zoom in, zoom out, rotate. So you can animate your camera as well. Whenever you are rendering here, you will see that it is very slow because After Effects is trying to render the effects, and you see that this frame per second here would not be accurate. So once the green bar here has been loaded, your animation will play smoothly. It's also based on what's the quality of your preview. Like let's say I put in as quarter, you see that it's smoother because it takes less time to render. If I put it as half, you see it takes a bit of while, and you can see that it is not in your proper frame rate. Also make sure that if you are animating in this other composition and you thought that, hey, I already enabled 3D and this motion blur, your layers in this composition had not been enabled yet, so it won't generate the motion blur effect. So make sure that your motion blur is set in your composition, if that is the effect that you want. Make sure that it's turned on. Once we have completed our animation and we want to render, we can go ahead and press Ctrl M, and it will pop out the render queues with all these rendering settings here that you can choose from. You can change the output module to the proper file that you want. You can enable your audio output here. So by default, when you render, After Effects would not help you check on the audio output. So once you're done, you just click on render and it will render your composition. So that's all for this tutorial. Thank you. Bye bye.